Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into what is, without a doubt, the single most passionately debated topic in all of global sports. Who is the absolute greatest football player of all time? Now, usually this conversation is driven by pure nostalgia, right? Or regional loyalty, or just raw emotion. But today, we're doing things differently. We're unpacking a comprehensive, incredibly detailed new study by a 7-member expert panel that strips away all of that bias. What's absolutely fascinating here is their mission, to definitively rank the greatest players in history, relying strictly on rigorous data, era-adjusted metrics, and deep tactical analysis. Right off the bat, we've got to acknowledge the elephant in the room. How on earth do you even begin to compare Pelé to Messi? Honestly, it feels like an impossible task. Think about it. You've got a 1950s striker who is dealing with heavy leather balls playing on rugged, muddy pitches against pretty rudimentary defensive lines. And then, on the flip side, you have a modern winger-turned-playmaker operating in these highly structured, data-driven, relentless pressing systems with scientifically optimized physical training. How can we possibly put them on the same scale without comparing apples to oranges? Well, here is our roadmap for today to figure that out. First, we'll look at solving the GOAT debate. Second, the era-adjusted framework. Third, football's Mount Rushmore. Fourth, building an all-time starting 11. And finally, predicting future legends. Let's jump right into Section 1, solving the GOAT debate through expert panel analysis. So, to eliminate that personal bias we talked about, this 7-member panel, which, by the way, included scouts, data scientists, coaches, and historians, used a concept called era adjustment bias. Basically, this was their master key to leveling the playing field. They knew they couldn't just look at raw goals and assists. A goal scored in 1955 simply doesn't require the exact same athletic output as a goal in 2015, and vice versa. By normalizing this historical data, factoring in the pitch quality, the actual weight of the ball, and how tactical systems evolved, they essentially built a mathematical bridge connecting these entirely different generations. Moving right along to Section 2, the era-adjusted framework and the methodology behind it. Every single player evaluated in the study was rigorously assessed across 12 weighted dimensions, adding up to a maximum possible greatness score of 100. They grouped everything into 4 main clusters: technical, athletic, mental, and achievements. To give you an idea, passing, range, and accuracy make up 8% of the score. Athletic traits like speed and agility sit at 6%. Now, tactical intelligence is a massive 10%, because truly understanding the game, that is timeless. And individual awards like the Ballon d'Or make up 7%. So what does this all mean? It means a player couldn't just be a good goal scorer. They literally had to be a complete, well-rounded phenomenon to even sniff the top of this list. To actually make those numbers fair, the panel applied specific evolution lenses. This is where the math gets really cool. Because defending was notably more primitive before the 1960s, a goal scored in that era is mathematically adjusted down. It's multiplied by 0.7. But if you played in the 60s through the 80s, you were facing brutal, aggressive man-marking systems like the Italian catenaccio. Attackers had way less protection from referees back then. So completing a successful dribble in that era is actually weighted up by 1.2 times. For the modern era, athletic outputs and pressing are used as the baseline benchmark. It's an incredibly clever way to neutralize the playing field. All right, Section 3, football's Mount Rushmore. We're talking about the immortals, the elite few who scored 95 and above. We have to start with the eternal benchmark himself, Pele. His career timeline is just ridiculous. He dominated with Santos from 1956 all the way to 1974. But his international record? That's what truly defies belief. He is still the youngest player to ever score in a World Cup final, doing it in 1958 at just 17 years old. By 1970, he had secured his 3rd World Cup victory. That is a totally unmatched feat, showing just immense longevity and adaptability as he transitioned his role across 3 completely different iterations of the Brazilian national team. Now get a load of this number, 127. That is exactly how many goals Pelé scored in a single calendar year back in 1959. Even when the data scientists apply those evolution lenses we talked about, mathematically adjusting this number down to account for weaker 1950s defending to map it onto the modern era, it still translates to roughly 83 adjusted goals. That remains the absolute highest single-season tally ever recorded in the history of football. Unbelievable. Moving to our next immortal, Diego Maradona.
The panel's coach summed up his legacy perfectly, pointing out that his transcendent, single-handed carry of Argentina to the 1986 World Cup remains the absolute peak of individual influence in a single tournament. During that incredible run, Maradona created 53% of Argentina's expected goals, all while being the most fouled player on the pitch by a mile.
This brings up a brilliant contrast in what greatness actually looks like when we compare Maradona to our third immortal, Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo is the embodiment of modern physical goal-scoring perfection. He evolved into this ultimate penalty box predator with an expected goals over performance of plus 23.7%, which is the highest among all tracked legends, by the way. He is an absolute machine of aerial dominance and lethal finishing. Maradona, on the other hand, was a left half-space creator. His greatness was defined by keeping a 60% plus dribble success rate while dodging literal leg-breaking tackles in the era of Catenaccio. Two wildly different profiles, but both mathematically charting as absolute immortals. And then we have the final immortal, Lionel Messi. His career arc is basically a masterclass in evolution. From 2004 to 2021, he was the heartbeat of Barcelona, winning 4 Champions Leagues as a nomadic creator and a false nine. Then, as he transitioned to PSG and eventually led Argentina to that monumental 2022 World Cup win, he adapted. He dropped into much deeper central playmaking roles, meaning he maintained absolute peak elite performance for an astonishing span of over 15 years. The underlying data behind Messi is honestly just as mind-boggling as Pele's goal count. The panel's data scientists noted that Messi's non-penalty expected goals plus expected assists per 90 minutes over his entire career sits at 0.97. Okay, let's put that into perspective. On average, every single time he steps on the pitch for a full game, he's essentially guaranteeing a goal or an assist from open play. It's a dual-threat metric that is totally unmatched in any recorded data we have. So here it is, the impartial, aggregate verdict from the panel's incredibly complex framework. Look at how razor-thin the margins are separating these top 4. Cristiano Ronaldo comes in at a 96.8, Diego Maradona right above at 97.1, Pelé hits 98.3, and Lionel Messi fractionally edges out Pelé for the absolute top spot with a 98.7, a score he finally secured following his historic 2022 World Cup win. The panel was quick to stress that you really couldn't go wrong picking any of these 4, but the math gives Messi the absolute narrowest of victories. Section 4. The all-time starting 11. Let's look at the panel's consensus 4-3-3 formation. Let's build the defensive block first. In goal, we've got Lev Yashin, the only goalkeeper in history to ever win a Ballon d'Or. Praised for his legendary shot-stopping with heavy balls and doing it with no gloves. The fullbacks are Brazilian icons Cafu and Roberto Carlos, bringing unmatched stamina and absolute power. Anchoring the center is pure defensive perfection in Paolo Maldini, paired alongside Franz Beckenbauer, a guy who literally redefined the center-back position as a playmaking sweeper. Now the midfield and attack, it's utterly terrifying. Lothar Matthäus is in there acting as the complete two-way defensive anchor. Ahead of him is Alfredo Di Stefano, the ultimate complete footballer, bringing immense tactical intelligence. And then you have an attacking quartet featuring all 4 of our immortals. Diego Maradona is pulling the strings as the ultimate number 10. You've got Cristiano Ronaldo on the left wing, Lionel Messi on the right wing, both drifting inside to support the most complete number 9 ever, Pelé. It's basically a staggering visualization of footballing perfection. Finally, Section 5, predicting future legends using predictive analytics. The data models actually split the next generation of superstars into 2 different tiers. First, you have the probable greats, players who are already well on the path, like Kylian Mbappe, Erling Haaland, and Vinicius Jr. I mean, Mbappe already has a World Cup and over 300 goals, and Haaland is just an absolute goal machine. Then you have the high-ceiling prospects, players like Jude Bellingham, who's completely redefining the box-to-box role, and Pedri, alongside incredibly young, explosive talents like Lamine Yamal. But here's the catch. Breaking into that all-time top 10 is harder today than it has ever been. As the panel's coach astutely pointed out, the modern legend must dominate the Champions League. Because international tournaments are short and highly volatile, the ultimate modern benchmark for sustained elite performance is conquering the Champions League year after year. That is the new barrier to entry for the GOAT debate. Which brings us to the end of our explainer. After looking at the rigorous data, the incredible history, and the spectacular young talent playing today, it leaves us with one final thrilling question to ponder. Out of all the players currently out there on the pitch, who will be the next one to breach that legendary 95-point threshold and carve their name alongside Messi, Pele, Maradona, and Ronaldo on the Mount Rushmore of football? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep your eyes on the pitch to see who makes history next.